Welcome, welcome, welcome. This is episode number 296. I'm really excited to have the guest that I have on today. A lot of stuff's going on in the industry. I think you guys are all keeping up to date of the race between Claude and ChatGPT and everything that's going on with AI and security and governance and compliance. I mean, everyone's getting contacted about like everything under the sun. I'm sure like everyone, you're getting contacted by sales guys that they have the next generation AI tool. I mean, I think everyone here, we've all gone through our history where we're here seeing next gen solutions, be it threat hunting tools, firewalls, you name it, all talking about that. And then the interesting thing, and we're going to be talking about this today, is that how are these tools evolving? And I think the biggest thing right now is before, when I used to be in cybersecurity sales, we used to talk about next generation. They say, what is that? And you're like, it's next generation. But what does it do? It's futuristic. But we really didn't know what it was. We really didn't know the actual root foundation of it. Well, today we're going to dive deep into that. We're actually going to tell you what AI is doing in the cybersecurity space. And I got Monzy here. He's a great expert. We were talking before the show. We've got a lot of great topics we're going to talk about. So Monzy began his career in the U.S. government and cyber, a Department of Energy lab in the desert, where he developed advanced offense and defense cybersecurity capabilities in the name of national security. He led security research at Splunk, helping shape strategy across the company's billion-dollar security profile. And he led cybersecurity's go-to-market at Databricks, where he scaled up the business. He co-founded, and I'm going to pronounce this wrong, get him to pronounce it, Krogel. In 2023, he helped security teams cut through alerts overhead. Krogel software uses knowledge engine and autonomous investigations, thousands of security alerts, letting human experts focus on what truly matters. So again, there's a lot of information we're going to get from Monzy. It's going to be an awesome show. So grab a coffee, grab a tea, and let's hack at it. Good afternoon, Monzy. You're just on mute. Give me a second. Let me bring you in here. There we go. Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you loud and clear. Good to be here, Brandon. How are you doing? Good to see you.
I'm excited. This is going to be a great episode. I mean, you have a depth of experience, one in cybersecurity, running kind of in both on the public sector, private sector, and then now looking at kind of, where you're at right now with your organization.
Yeah, I mean, this is what I know. This is all I know, for good reason or bad reason. Committed my entire life to building things and hacking on things and being part of this community.
Which is good. I think, walk me through the evolution of kind of like where you started to like where you are today and how things are changing.
Yeah, I mean, I feel, I really got into the cyber just from a practice point of view. I want to say probably right around 2000, 2002 kind of time period. And I mean, we've gone now all the way from having just using TCP dump, or we back in the day, the term APT wasn't even around, and at the weapons labs we were chasing advanced threat actors. We didn't really have a name for them. We just we had names for them, but it wasn't like an industry term. And then over the years, the discipline has evolved. And it's gone from big data technologies to EDRs to complex solutions to, reverse engineering malware. And most of us started from either from the networking side of the house, really understanding how protocols worked, or we came in from the developer side of the house, really understanding how software is built to figure out what the bugs were, to now maturing into this huge industry. I mean, I saw the inflection point for high-speed internet. We went from like having T1 lines all the way to 10 gig lines. And one of the big things that we built on the team was we built this 100 gigabits per second full line rate inspection system. And people are like, why are you building that? Nobody even has a gigabit Ethernet link, and then seeing the other inflection point with cloud, seeing the inflection point with big data, and now seeing the then mobility, and then seeing the inflection point now with AI. So it's been an amazing, I don't know what the right term for this is, but very volatile. And very fortunate. I think this is really a community of people in cyber, of people who are resilient, who want to grow, who want to change, and those who don't want to change are not part of this community, because there's just change is just constant in the way the world works.
Well, I think that was the one thing when I got it. When I was in school, I was in trios, and one of the instructors said this, and he said right to the class. His name was Clyde. He was a great instructor. He said, "Look, I'm sorry to tell you guys this, but you're constantly going to be learning. This is not a one and done course. It's not a one and done thing. You're not going to take this and think you know everything, right? You're going to constantly be learning. You're going to constantly be doing certifications. You're going to constantly be doing that. If this is not what you want to do and not the career for you, then you don't want to be in IT." And you can kind of hear everyone kind of take a step back, because everyone thinks, like, when you first go to school, well, I go to school, I get my college diploma, or I get my degree, and then I'm done. And then now I go work my career and everything's good and everything's sunny. I get a house, 2 kids, a dog, picket fence, all that stuff, and I'm done. But in IT and cybersecurity, it is always changing. I mean, something I was talking to, like, certain instructors, where by the time they write their curriculum and they take their that year through it, the technology is out of date.
Yeah.
Right. So now when they come out, like, they have the base foundation, but now it's okay. That's great. That was version 5, but we're on version 6 now. So you have to now learn version 6.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's really cool. I mean, for a person like myself and many colleagues that I know, we kind of have this strange brain, right? We like change and we want to tinker with new things. And it's that learning that keeps us all going. I mean, even in the last couple of years, we've been introduced to this whole new set of things with AI. What's an embedding? What's a knowledge graph? What's semantic? What's an ontology? What's a large language model? Or, how is it built? How is it different? What's a layer? There's all these different terms that people sometimes just sort of throw around. What's an agent? What's an agentic framework? What's a harness? And it's just constant. And that's really the exciting part.
So I think that's the thing, and I want to get into that, like, talking about the knowledge engine. Let's kind of jump into that, because there's so many terminologies and things that you're talking about, like in the industry. Anthropic has a course you can go take free online, so anyone needs to get spun up and then kind of understand the base foundation. Anthropic, I think, is .io learn. If you guys want it, message me on LinkedIn. I'll give it to you guys. But it's one of those things that it at least gives everyone a baseline. So we're all speaking the same language, because you and I know acronyms and terminology.
Oh gosh, yes,
and
yeah. So I mean, let me just lay down the foundation. And it really, knowledge engine is an answer to a problem statement. And the problem statement is we've lived in a world where there were SOAR platforms or SIM platforms, and those platforms are very deterministic being the key word. And they're good for certain purposes. But when things kind of go outside the edges a little bit, those platforms are brittle. And so they can't see something that's outside. But determinism is good because it's good for compliance, it's good for consistency, it's good for auditability. But people needed something that's a little bit more creative. So the other side of the house is you need creativity and reasoning. And that's the kind of thing that a language model might bring to the table. So you take these two, both the determinism piece and the reasoning and creativity piece, and now you need something in the middle to manage that interconnectivity in a well-governed, transparent way. And so the knowledge engine is essentially is a definition of our architecture, essentially, that combines the deterministic side of the house and the reasoning side of the house in a single system, so that you can get the best of both of these worlds, and you can do security investigations and threat hunting and compliance work a lot faster, orders of magnitude faster than you could otherwise by just focusing on one system alone.
So what's the standard? Like, if I was going to say, okay, and I want to kind of play devil's advocate here. If I was going to say, okay, I'm doing an assessment, I'm looking at an organization, how do I know the difference between those two models? Right? If I'm going to say, like, and use this example, you've got threat hunting companies, you've got, SIM companies, they're all talking about this. Well, how do I know what they're using?
Yeah, I mean, I think the best way to do is to ask them, and this is kind of the challenge in the space. So speaking from the Krogel side of the house for a minute, Krogel is an on-prem software, and it's not a SaaS. It's a customer managed software. It can be deployed air-gapped and it can be deployed in the cloud, but it's customer managed. So in Krogel's case, you have the bits. It's very obvious what it's doing. When you have a SaaS product, you don't really know what's back there. You don't know what language model your provider is using, or what happens to your data when you make that call to that language model, and another thing. So I would say in Krogel's case, you look at the documentation, you look at the way the system's behaving, you know exactly what's happening. In the SaaS case, I think you'll have to ask your SaaS provider to say, hey, what do you use? What do you do with my data? How do you handle it? And what kind of models are you using under the hood? Whether it's the language model, whether it's a knowledge graph, whether it's other capabilities that they're using under the hood. Those things are they're a little opaque, and that's why we built Krogel the way we built it. Because a lot of organizations that we serve, whether it's electric utility companies or really well-resourced government organizations, they want that transparency and they want that control. Or now people are using the word sovereign. They want that sovereignty around their deployment. So I think people should rightly ask those questions so you understand how your data flows are happening, and only your provider will be able to answer that.
So you're talking about sovereignty. Why is that important? Like, why are you getting that? Because I understand on my standpoint, but I want to, because people that are watching this are still kind of getting up to speed when it comes to AI and security. Why is sovereignty important for the customers that you work with? Why are they bringing that up as a one of their variables that they need?
Yeah, so it's a very important component for a couple of reasons. One is that, so sovereignty, let's just maybe define the term for a minute. I think we all have our different definitions, right? So oftentimes when you ask somebody what is sovereignty, it's like, well, I want full governance, I want control of the system, and I want my data to stay with me. That's oftentimes the sort of the tip of the iceberg of the conversation. A layer deeper into that, what we've learned and what customers are talking about is they want choice. They want to use whatever model they want to use. They want to use whatever data they want to use. They want to use it when they want to use it. So sovereignty is a little bit deeper than just control. It's about choice, and it's about the ability to run your business the way you want to run it. And that's the core of it. The reason why we built the product this way, so that the customer can have full sovereignty, we wanted to serve communities that prioritize security as a core function. Electric utility companies, really, really large banks, really well-resourced government agencies. All of these organizations prioritize security. We wanted to serve those organizations. And it's, I'll share this with the audience too. It's super hard to build an on-prem customer-managed product that is fully capable AI system as a sovereign system. It's very hard to build that, but we took that challenge on because we came from that world of working in really mission critical environments. And we always felt that those were like in the air gap or classified environment that I have worked in the past, that environment never got the most awesome tools, but that is the kind of environment that needs the most awesome tools for cybersecurity work. And it was because, well, you have to be this tall and the product has to be safe and it has to be vulnerability managed and all the security and governance features have to be in there. And no startup starts with that aspiration because no VC wants to fund all of this. Because the VC will say, well, go find your little niche and go do your thing, find a couple of partners, and then slowly work your way up to higher order organizations that are more complex. We wanted to solve the hard problem first and go serve the communities that need this capability the most. And that's why we focus so heavily on sovereignty from day zero.
Well, I think to add to your point, I think the other thing they think about is data control. Right? They want that data to be in their environment. They don't want to leave their environment. So any type of tool, whatever AI tool or solution, the sovereignty that I'm hearing about is they want control of their data too. Right? They don't want it leaving the environment. They don't want it going exfiltrated. They don't want it going in different, because now there's governance and compliance and it's hardened, it's encrypted. How are you guys resting? Are you guys putting this, like all these other governance questions come up. But if they have it in their environment and they have control of it, now they fall under their policies, their governance, and they have restrictions on.
And I think the adjacency to that, I'm so glad you called that out, because it's about, I want to control my data, where my data goes or how my data is processed essentially or accessed is one very important aspect of what you're calling out. The other adjacency to it that we also learned, especially in security investigations, teams were telling us that they want to use other data as part of their investigations and threat hunting processes that is not quote unquote cybersecurity data, but that data is resident on-prem somewhere. and they will never send that data or allow a third party to access that business data or that proprietary data that they have in house. So when they see something like Krogel come in and Krogel says, well, you can deploy it, it's all yours, nothing ever goes anywhere else, they're like, this is great, because now I can connect up whatever I want to connect up to get access and to move my investigation forward faster, or my threat hunting forward faster, or now more and more people are starting to talk about how do I do blast radius assessments for a given vulnerability, because now the vulnerability disclosure rate is getting so much higher that they need to figure out what's going on, and they want to do it faster. So they want to connect more and more data sets. So that sovereignty becomes even more important when it comes to that data richness and data access.
Well, that's all comes down to investigation exposure. Like you're talking about, they want to have a full exposure to their own environment to understand the gaps, the vulnerabilities, and in real time, right, to be able to go through that process, right? Because they want to be able to say, okay, do you have full visibility of your environment? Yes or no? They don't want to say they have gaps. Oh, we only can see that. We don't have access to APIs to connect with that server. Like whatever that gap is, right? They don't want to say, yeah, we don't know over here. They want to have like, no, we know all our servers, all our network traffic. We know our firewalls. We know everything. Everything now is logging, and we can have visibility. So, I mean, I think that's
and more what I see people asking for is they want to get access to it when they need it, because otherwise, to adopt sort of a mentality that says, well, I want everything all the time, that doesn't make a lot of operational sense either. And so in certain cases, you want to just be able to go touch a piece of data or enrich something on the fly when you need it, and not just always be collecting and always be doing stuff, because under certain circumstances it's not operationally feasible, or it's maybe too expensive, or whatever those constraints might be. So it's about that flexibility to just go get what you need when you need it as well. That's another aspect of that sovereignty piece, because if you know that data set, when you get access to it, that data is not going to leave your environment, then you can then go and deal with it when you're in the running system.
Well, and that leads me into like what you're talking about, and I'm going to transition to like threat hunting, because I think that's a good transition point for you and I is when we're talking about IR, instant response, right? And we're talking about, when people are going through an event, an incident, ransomware, business email compromise, network intrusion, whatever that may be, that data, like you said, they want to have it accessible to be able to look at what happened. Now, something you've mentioned, and I think I'm going to say on my side, the devil's advocate, there's data, retention on the actual logs. So they have to have so many logs in the sense of 6 months, 1 year of logs that they can pull that data and then start doing investigation. So I want to be clear to people that some of these tools, when they say, okay, it's on the fly and all that, you have to have a repository of those logs to be able to pull from. It's not like, hey, it's pulling from real data and that's all it does, real-time information. You got to have a backlog of historical data and logs to be able to pull from, because your threat actors could be in 3 months, 6 months prior doing reconnaissance, doing their investigation before activity actually starts happening, because something you and I know, they're using real tools. So it might not be flagged. They might be using TeamViewer or something like that, or remote desktop. I was talking to a colleague today about like how companies are just terrible with remote desktop, right? But RDP and things like that, when you sit there and go, oh, but they'll flag because they're using threat actor tools. No, they're actually maybe using real enterprise level tools that might not get flagged, and they're doing reconnaissance and moving around the environment, and then all of a sudden you see a suspicious activity, which is 3 months later, and now you start to go, oh my God, they got in. It's like, no, they were in before.
Yes. I mean, I think I don't think you're being devil's advocate. I think you're laying out sort of the base, capability that is required is you have to have historical data. And sometimes historical data is not available for a variety of different reasons, or the data may not be collected, or you may have to go to a database that stores, let's say, travel information or asset information, which is not necessarily log data. So there's a variety of different things that you need to be able to touch and operate. So yeah, I think we're in agreement. I think this is more of a layering of things. But yeah, without historical visibility, you can't do investigation. That's impossible.
Now, because you talked about your background on this, and you've come up through hunting and all that. How was that then, and compare it to now, what you're seeing in 2026, July of how we're doing threat hunting. I kind of want to see the evolution of threat hunting.
Yeah, so let's just like go down to brass tacks, right? Way back in the day, and I think maybe my experience goes even farther beyond this, but let's start with when most people realized what APT was, and that was once Mandiant published the APT-1 report. And that's when a whole bunch of people came to realization, oh wow, there are foreign threat actors and they're doing. So let's just take that as the example. The Mandiant APT-1 report drops, and now your boss.
APT.
Advanced persistent threat.
Yeah, I just want to put that in because some people are starting out in cybersecurity, or we've got senior leadership that they're looking at all these technical terms we talked about before, right?
Yes. So thank you for that. I'll be more careful. Yes. So so Mandiant created this report for threat actor from China. They called the report APT-1. This report came out, I think, maybe 12, 13 years ago, maybe a little bit longer. My memory is a little bit fuzzy. But in the APT-1 report is a very long document, really, really well written threat intel report. It has IP addresses, it has geolocations, it has user agent strings, it has command information. Just a very, very big, rich report, and I think this should be required reading for anybody in the cybersecurity community because that was one of the papers that changed how we looked at China or we looked at foreign threat actors at a broader scale. And so, for somebody who would have gotten that APT-1 report back in that day, they would have literally gone through that PDF and copied, pasted the IP addresses to see was there communication. But even before that, then the question is, well, where would they have copy pasted that? Mm-hmm. Because in that time, most of us, we didn't have these big data-driven log monitoring systems. Some of us, if we were super advanced, maybe we had a SIM.
Right.
But most of us went to our packet repositories, our PCAP repositories, or our packet header repositories, or we looked at our snort logs or our IDS logs that we were, that maybe we were using. And then so essentially you're just hunting and poking in a lot of different places. There's no single set of data, and there's no place. And then we're bringing all this stuff. I mean, this is like weeks and weeks of work. Mm-hmm. Trying to figure things out.
Your context here too that you're not addressing, but I know you did. A lot of times you'd have to write scripts and do queries and do all that to try to look through this subset of data. It wasn't a point where you're like, today you do a search query and you narrow it down and now you've got you'd actually have to create a batch file or write a Python script or someone to now come down to, okay, I found what I was looking for, at least in this set of data. So to give kind of context, right? Because I know
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. And it's been so long that we forget. This is a really, really important call out because, and it's even worse. I mean, if you want to really get into the pain of it, right? It's even worse than that. You're on one Unix console or Linux console and you log into another system and you pull something out, you pull a batch file out, you write some kind of a script or you write some sort of a SQL query or you write some sort of a regular expression after tailing a file on the console, and then you write some grep thing with sed and awk and you pull that out, and then you SCP over and you pull that file back onto your workstation, and now you start to manipulate it to try to figure out what's in it. Mm-hmm. And this is a very sort of an obscene cycle by today's standards. But that's what we would do. It would just take weeks and weeks worth of time. And then the intermediary was people started using sort of normalized platforms. I worked for Splunk for almost a decade. That was one of the biggest use cases. Get all the data into Splunk. People could search it. You can write Splunk queries. You can build dashboards for people who were not so good at writing Splunk queries. Somebody would build some sort of a form thing. So you can punch in some IP address and it will create the reports for you automatically. And then it will start to do some of those. So that was sort of an intermediary work. Yeah. Now you fast forward to today. Mm-hmm. And what happens is, and I would, at some point maybe we do a follow-up. I would love to show you a demo of this in Krogel. You can literally type into Krogel to investigate the Volt Typhoon advisory from CISA. Mm-hmm. Krogel will go download the advisory off the internet. It'll figure out where all the data is. It'll figure out where your data is. It'll write the appropriate queries for all of your different log stores. And it will then generate a report at the end of it to tell you what are the assets, identities, and vulnerabilities that are impacted as a consequence of that threat intel report from the CISA advisory. And that takes, an order of sub 10 minutes. Mm-hmm. And so that is now the state of the art. Now, the natural question then becomes, well, how do you, and this is the more interesting part of where we live now, is if you don't understand as a practitioner the basics of kind of going through that journey, that's when we start asking ourselves the question, do I believe this report or not?
Mm-hmm.
That is generated by an AI. But I think we can get into that more in the later part of the conversation. But we've gone, so essentially the word that I have now is compression. We've gone from what used to take weeks of time down to, sub 10 minutes of time by using AI capability, given an advisory that that comes out. So we're living in an exciting times.
Well, I think the other thing too, to your point, is you're talking about Croggle, and that's, I know, your solution, but Claude, ChatGPT, like any of those ones, people now can do threat hunting and collect more information, research CVEs, kind of do all that, generate a report, understand if it understands your environment, your firewalls, your servers, your versions, all that. It can give you a snapshot and a vulnerability report, even a security gap assessment, just saying, okay, you want to investigate this. Here's what we saw. Here's the CVEs you want to. These are now on the industry standard. They're critical, high, whatever. Here's the recommended remediation. We found the remediation. We found how it relates to your environment, and you get a full report. And you can go, here you go. And that can be done, like you said, if you prompt your solution, whatever that means, ChatGPT, Claude, whatever that may be, in a way that it can do that. Also, now you've cut down and that's why I wanted to talk about your first kind of writing batch files, going through and collecting from one log to another log. That can be done in 10, 15 minutes, right? And then you can set up there as a skill in Claude, or set up as instructions in ChatGPT. But now that can be repeatable, right? Because now you can jump in data and say, okay, hey, can you do the same thing and run me a report on that, right? And now do some more research. So I think, and what my point being, and I want to hear from your side, is I think we're becoming more efficient to doing more research and investigation.
Yes, I think so. Maybe just a couple of things I want to call out. Yes, you can do these kinds of investigations. So first, the base idea is things are way faster. We have the opportunity to do things in a very, very rapid, fast way. One thing though that I want the audience to know, I did a talk on this at Black Hat last year about how to build your own AI SOC agent. And the thing that gets sometimes lost between the demo and the operational reality is that part where an independent frontier model or independent agent can create, can help you go through certain things. But if that system doesn't have access to your systems of record, whether that's log data, whether that's your asset management system, whether that's other business data, if that system doesn't have access to that investigation is going to be incomplete. And that's the best case scenario. The worst case scenario is that investigation is going to run. And it's going to run because it's going to give you a result, a beautiful report, but that report is not going to be sensitized with your real information. Because think about, if you just I would invite everybody to do this, just go to your favorite frontier model and just ask it, write me a query to detect how many emails Bob sent last week or something like that, and write that query in Splunk or Databricks or whatever. It will create a query for you and it's going to give it to you. Now, I want you to take that query and I wanted you to run it on the system where you have your data. It will not work because that generative AI system has no knowledge of the schema and the data types and those sorts of things within your own environment. And so there is a cycle there to figure that out. And a frontier model is going to spend a significant amount of time to sort that out. Now, it's doable and it can figure it out. But the point is that you now have to be doing that over and over and over again. And that's a very, very expensive proposition. And then achieving consistency, even with skill writing, is very difficult because you can have a skill, but the model will do the best it can under the circumstances when it executes that skill. Mm-hmm. And therefore, your answers may be different or your pathing may be a little bit different each time that skill's run. That's not a flaw in the skill. But the point is that there is diversity in how that happens. And this is why you need a little bit more maturity to put things into the system, and also to manage the diversity of data that's there, because your data is not normalized, and most skills will assume that your data is normalized.
Right.
And so therefore then they're going to have, your outcomes are going to vary. And the way we solve this problem, that's why I started with the knowledge engine sort of definition. And this is not a secret, right? A lot of people can utilize this technique. Krogel follows this same pattern. Other systems can follow the same pattern, is that you need to have a knowledge graph of the reality of the data that you have, so that when a query gets constructed and when a query gets executed, it's constructed and executed according to the data that you have.
Right.
And not according to some arbitrary syntactically correct query, but an operationally irrelevant query, which is oftentimes what happens if you just plainly just use a language model.
Right. Yeah, because they have to train it, and I get that. Right. It has to be set up in a way that it can understand efficiently the data set, the data, what they're using, what it's querying, and then how to utilize that in a way that the organization needs it, right? Or you're going to be keeping prompting. You're going to keep trying to train the model.
Yeah, constantly, and I think that's like, to the appropriateness of the banner here for the real pain point on the SOC. Mm-hmm. When I talk to a lot of colleagues, what we hear is that they do something with the large language model, and they immediately see an opportunity. And so they go run to somebody and say, oh, let's fund a project and do this and make this, move forward, and we can get some really good outcomes. And that's the inspiration, and that's great. But 95%, MIT did a report on this, 95% of AI projects fail. And they fail because there is a huge delta between that first very simple inspirational kind of an experience to building a repeatable, consistent system. Mm-hmm. That is operationally informed and operationally relevant, that you can say, what, I believe this system, and we can move forward. So we're entering sort of this net new kind of an area where I think it's good to be skeptical, and it's good about AI systems for the right reasons, and it's good to ask your vendors, and it's good to test, and it's good to pay attention to how these systems are built and how they operate. And so in some ways, it's back to the bash line again, from back in the day, where we needed to really understand how to write a regular expression. Now it's not a regular expression. Now we need to understand how the data flow happens in an agentic system, so that we can ask it good questions and we can trust the responses that come back, or at least we have the confidence to understand what are the bounds within which that response can be trusted. Because you can create some very beautiful responses that are incorrect.
Right. Yeah, and it won't get you the output you want. Now, going back to your point, like the SOC, what other real pain points are you seeing, or is the industry seeing right now when it comes to AI?
So I think there's two really important things. One is, most organizations are still just barely catching up to the cloud inflection point with respect to threat detection, response, mm-hmm. remediation kinds of wills. And now all of a sudden we have this AI thing that's happening. And by AI thing, what I mean is that the business users are starting to use AI-driven tools and technologies. And those AI-driven tools and technologies are creating new kinds of risks for organizations, everything from transitive trust to resource exhaustion to data leakage. Mm-hmm. And those things are happening. So teams are just grappling with trying to figure out, how to manage this stuff, because the other workload hasn't gone away. And now you have this net new workload, and in terms of trying to figure out how to secure the organization. So that sort of volume gap is really big. And the second thing is sort of this I would call it just a competency gap, is just like any new technology, especially with AI. I mean, there are very few experts for anything AI related, whether it's in the security domain or otherwise, because the pace of change is so fast that it's really difficult to wrap your head around, to really try to understand. So we have a volume problem and we have a competency problem right now, and those are the two biggest pain points. Now those two pain points are now further getting kind of either worsened, if you will, because of this inspirational attitude that many of us are adopting, which, by the way, I think is a very good thing. Mm-hmm. But what we're doing then is, when somebody gets a little bit of success and they start repeating that without really thinking about the foundations, they're actually making the situation worse for themselves, because they don't understand. They haven't had the opportunity, not because they're lazy, they just haven't had the opportunity to learn through the system and now they think the system is doing something that perhaps it's not. And so those three things are, I just see this over and over again in organizations.
No, it's true. Now, that being said, how are you identifying working with AI as a teammate?
So I think this goes back to, I mean, I would invite people to think about, like, again, maybe I'm just too old, right? It's that you got to know your tools, and I would say AI is just a tool, and it's, as any practitioner, as any craftsman who's good at their craft, whether you're really good at a chisel and a hammer and your name is Michelangelo and you can make beautiful statues, or whether you're a craftsman because you are a software developer and you understand how to use your IDEs and your tools to get your job done. You just got to know your tools really, really well. And so I think AI as a teammate is an incredibly powerful concept. And the more any given person invest in learning how the given AI tooling that they're using works, what are the edges, where it works, where it doesn't work. I think that is the core challenge, I think, for many of us going forward in the next couple of years, is to really understand how these technologies work. And unfortunately, there is no shortcut. Is that we just have to learn it, and we have to spend energy by tinkering and experimenting and learning it. And it's a very powerful set of tools. I mean, it's the next iteration of, some of us got good at writing scripts back in the day. Now this is the next iteration where, now that you're dealing with text you communicate with the AI using natural language. Mm-hmm. Now you got to get good at how to communicate with the AI, and in order how to do that well, in order to do that, you have to understand how that AI system works.
Right, and I think one thing to people to understand too, and I was talking to a colleague about this. Don't think of AI as, and it was a project they were talking about. Don't think they're going to take over that project right away, right, or that process, or that what you're doing. You got to build it up. You got to test it. You got to go through a software development life cycle. You got to get to a point where it is doing that process over and over again to the baseline and or efficiency that you're looking for. Then if you want to sunset the other process or whatever, then you do that. I'm getting a lot of people going, well, I'm just going to throw AI in, it's going to do it. And they don't realize the level of effort it takes to get it to where it actually can do it. Like, I've heard, and I've done it myself, where I'm sitting there for, trying to do something. I'm fighting with AI, and my wife's laughing, yelling at it. Right? I'm like, why aren't you listening to me? Like, I told you to do this. Why are you hallucinating? Why are you going this different direction? I didn't say to do that. I gave you clear instructions. Stay on task. And then all of a sudden goes left and it goes right. And I'm like, damn you, AI, right? But I think that's the thing where people like you and I, we understand that. And we give it grace that, okay, it's going to take more time. Because not only am I trying to do this task, but I also have to train it how to do it. And I have to make sure, it's like a new employee, I have to make sure it understands my process and how I want the deliverable, and the like you said, the different guidelines and instructions I need to provide it to be able to do what I wanted to do. And then I need to test it to make sure the output's right. And then I have to correct it. Okay, that output's not right. I need you to fix this and this. Now I need you to save that and now do it again.
Yes.
By the fourth or fifth time, by the time it does it and I'm comfortable with it, now I can say, okay, I trust the process. But it's like, hold on, no. I'm only on version 2, version 3. Hold on, it's still not there yet. You got to have that mindset for anyone that's trying to use AI. Give that that development cycle, in part of your implementation of AI, wherever you're doing. So it's for security, it's for SOC, it's for threat hunting. Don't just trust the data that, hey, I said this AI and I did a threat hunting, I got a report, and I'm going to send it up to senior leadership, or I'm going to give it the team and go. And they're like, yeah, well, we don't have a Fortinet firewall. Like, I don't understand. What do you want me to plug? But it says it's like critical vulnerability. Like, yeah, we don't have Fortinet firewall. So I don't know what you want me to do, right? Like, stuff like that, we got to make sure we do our due diligence.
Yeah, I totally agree. And there is, that goes back to just the basic concept. Like, there is no shortcut. You have to spend the energy. If you want to build a reliable system, it requires effort. And maybe just a little trick that we use internally at Krogel. I've had these discussions with other leaders. Is you want to set a goal for yourself. It doesn't have to be like super crazy, aspirational, revolutionary. But if you want to use, for example, AI to generate a report, and that's your goal, what you want to do is that you have to set that target for yourself and say, you know what, I am not going to write a report myself. I'm going to spend energy and I'm going to set a target that next month, at least 2 of my reports will be 100% AI generated. Now, when you set that goal for yourself, it will then naturally get you on a journey to refine that process and refine it and refine it and refine it. And then you'll get outcomes. On the flip side, if you say, well, it'll be cool if I could generate some reports with AI and sometimes I spend 5 minutes on it and sometimes don't spend, you're never going to get to that end state. Right. Because you've never removed that crutch for yourself and you haven't set a target for yourself. So I'd say it's achievable. Set a target for yourself, and then keep iterating over it. And of course, the tools themselves are improving as well. So some of your problems that you're experiencing may get resolved along the way, but it still doesn't. The ownership is still on the user.
100%. Now, with that being said, I know one of the questions I get is AI going to take over our jobs? Am I going to be sitting there now flipping burgers, and maybe robots are going to be flipping burgers too? Like, am I going to be out of work that I'm not going to be able to do anything? And it's literally going to be doing my job, my security job, everything. And I'm not going to be able to work. And I'm just going to be sitting here at home.
Yeah. So this is a point of passion for me, but also a point of like base principle driven arguments. So I'll just give you the punchline first. I believe there are going to be more security engineering jobs or more security related jobs in the future than there are today.
Right.
So that's this total number of people working in the security industry. So I believe in that because I think when you look at the amount of work that's growing, the way the technologies sets are evolving, the way the use cases are evolving, the way the adversaries are going to evolve, and every new footprint and every inflection point in technology, whether it's cloud or mobility, has created new jobs, more people working the problem sets. So for that reason, I believe the same thing is going to happen with AI. There's going to be more security engineering jobs. That said, some tasks that people do today will go away. Mm-hmm. Because those like as an example, like even Kogel users, right? They no longer type Splunk queries anymore, or Elastic queries, or Databricks queries. They say, we'll do an investigation for ticket number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and the query gets generated for them. Mm-hmm. And so if you're just somebody who was taking one thing and copy pasting it into another thing, and you did not invest the energy into learning your craft and wanting to excel and grow within your craft, well, those tasks are going to go away. There's going to be lots of those tasks. But the total number of people doing more things and new things is going to continue to grow. So I would say, I saw a meme the other day. There was a farmer talking to a horse, and the farmer is saying, well, your job is not going to get taken away by a tractor. Your job is going to get taken away by a horse who knows how to manage a tractor.
Right.
And so that's the kind of world we're going to be in, is that people who grow and evolve, and that's always been the history of humans. The people who grow and evolve will have outcomes, and there's going to be more of us that are going to be required as time goes on. And those who hang up their hat and say, well, I'm not doing this kind of thing, and I'm not growing, or this thing hallucinates too much, or whatever, and this is hoo-ha, and it's just a fad. I assure you, this is not a fad. And so it's essentially, to put it bluntly, is we have to continue to evolve. And that's the security community has always been. We've evolved through all these inflection points.
I think that's a good point, because I think one of the things I want people to take home is like, and I talked about this earlier, like go to Anthropic, learn the course, like get the baseline, start doing that, because it's going to come into your company. It's going to come in your job role. You're going to see your customers, your clients, your colleagues are going to be talking about it. If they're already in deep in it right now, the next 6 months to 1 year, you're going to be exposed to it. So like you said, either one, you get left behind, right? And then you're not marketable, and then you don't have the skills to do it. Or you start doing it now, and then when the time comes and say, okay, hey, I got some questions, you're like, okay, yeah, let's go. Like, I've been doing it. I've got some labs going on. I've been doing this. I looked at the security. I got reports going. I've been testing stuff. I'm playing with other stuff. What do you need to talk about? What do you want to do? And then you're ahead of the game. And I think that's the one challenge, and we were talking about offline, is like certain, I want to call them simple, but easier generating solutions and technology and or tasks, i.e., and I'm going to use this example, policy writing. Policy writing is going to be more efficient than having someone actually write the policy, because AI is going to be able to do that with multiple agents a lot quicker by collecting research and information, by looking at templates, bringing that all together, making sure it aligns with the corporate value, the style guide, the logos, right? Understand the org chart, putting all that into the policy and say, okay, now we've got the acceptable use policy. Do you want me to write you all the rest of the policies? Instant response, disaster recovery, and then go through it. And you can have templates, and then if you can paint by numbers, there's some areas you might have to fill out. Some exercise where it takes 6 months to write policies, now you might be talking about a week to 2 weeks, right? Because now you're going through and just revising it. And I think people that are at that policy writing now they need to step that one stage up. They need to go through like consulting and like making sure that you can audit properly and do all that. And then when the policy comes, they can review it and make sure it meets with the company standards and or the governance, all that, because they might not know that, right? Oh, hold on. You put HIPAA in here. Do you guys have any EPHI data in the environment? No. So you don't need to put that in your policy. Oh, you put PCI DSS. Do you actually deal with credit cards? No, we don't have credit cards. Okay, well, you can remove that from the policy. So there's going to be some of the things that you're going to need an expert to come in at the high level and review, but they might not be writing that policy. So you might need to step it up. Security analysts. We talk about threat hunting and doing the analysis of the logs and all that. Well, if you get AI pulling all the logs, pulling all the data, creating tickets, writing reports, putting recommendations, looking at the CVEs, doing that research, going that, and then combining it with the information of your environment, that level one security analyst now should move up to level 2. Because now they can be able to take that ticket and now work on the remediation. But again, a lot of level ones are the ones that are collecting all the data, putting it into a ticket, looking false positive, false negative, is this real? Do we not have it? Whatever. Do we have to be concerned? Is it really critical? Is it really high? Okay, great. They're logging that in. Now they got a ticket. So next one, they move on. Well, AI is potentially going to be able to do that. So we want these level 1 analysts to move up to level 2, level 3.
Yeah, it is the same foundation in the sense that, when I was younger, the oftentimes the intelligence of a child was measured by how many phone numbers that child could remember.
Right.
and so anymore we don't compete on that. And because it's just, I don't know how many phone numbers anybody remembers now, but we just ask, hey Google, hey Siri, hey whatever platform that you're using to call the number, and you just have the number saved. You just search for it and it goes, right? That's a very sort of trivial example of a lot of us do that kind of work, which is essentially what I call, data aggregation, data synthesis, some sort of text generation or report generation, and some kind of a review cycle. And in each one of those stages, there is a lot of compression now that can happen. Like all the examples that you gave, you're collecting context, you're collecting data, you're synthesizing a lot of information, you're writing queries, or you're poking into different systems to gather that information together. Well, a lot of that can go away with automation and integration. And, talking to a lot of people, I believe most people don't want to do that job anyway. I mean, I think we kind of realize that that's very boring. It's not intellectually fulfilling. Mm-hmm. You're just kind of going through a step-by-step kind of a thing, which is kind of very robotic, and that should be given to the robot. And the machine should do that kind of work. And the human beings can kind of start to then slowly escalate into design and architecture and decisioning and really arguing over what moves your product or service or your organization forward, and have more energy and time to think about those kinds of aspects of things and fill in the gaps where the machines can't fill in the gaps. So I'm optimistically very bullish on this in the sense that some tasks, that's why I keep rotating on the task. The task is going to go away, or the task can be reduced a lot, and the overhead of the task can be reduced. But I believe that our contribution will continue to grow, because we have better tools.
100%. The only thing is, and you can playing the other side of the fence here, I think those roles are important for training and development.
Yes.
Right? Because again, if you're coming in, again, everyone who's broken into the industry starts at the bottom. When you're going to, and I'll talk back in the day when I started work, you swept the floors in warehouse. I wasn't working the machinery. I wasn't doing that. I was the guy sweeping the floors, taking out the garbage. And then you worked up and you started to help a little bit on the line. And then you kind of moved up, right? Same with security. You become a security level analyst is because now you're looking at the tickets. You're looking at what's coming in. You're learning the environment. You're in the network topology. You're looking at the EDR. Why is that? Why are we having so many of these alerts and these tickets? And what is it monitoring? And you'll learn that baseline. So then when you go into like the actual level 2 support of remediating, you have a baseline of the environment. You understand the tool set. You understand how it works.
Yeah, I mean, there is exactly, and I think it creates more opportunities now to do that learning and to go deeper into the problem set and make a larger contribution. Because whereas before you might just get an alert for, I don't know, brute force detected on Bob's computer, and you just kind of look into it. You call Bob, and Bob says everything is fine or whatever. However it is that you resolve that particular alert. Now that kind of alert is off the table. Now you can focus on an alert that really makes sense, that a human needs to pay attention to, because the machine can't connect all the dots.
Right.
And now you're starting to learn about the environment, and then you can make an educated recommendation to somebody and say, hey, we got to change the way things work over here, because that could cause a real problem, or we had a close call and maybe that shouldn't happen that way anymore. So I think it makes us more capable, and it moves us forward.
Yeah, makes sense. Yeah, and I can see, like, as we evolve, like, and use Bob as an example, if there is suspicious activity, you can actually log him out, disable his account. He has to call the help desk, and now the help desk says, "Okay, Bob, I've got an alert. It's in a ticket. We saw this type of activity. What's going on?" Right? Because again, something that you and I know about dealing with that. Sometimes you might not have the actual individual available to take
Yes.
action, but if the system can take action, disable the account, and if there's a threat actor doing brute forcing, and trying to get into that account, and they're actually being able to be successful, well, if that count's disabled, that stops. Right?
Yes.
It completely
And
stops.
and that stops within the company policy,
Yeah.
because some organization might say stop, because I'm sure some of the listeners are going, there's no way I'm cutting Bob off just because I see a brute force alert, right? And it's a very reasonable thing to say, because within your organization policy, that's not allowed, or that is not the best course of action. In other organizations, the best course of action is there. So there's lots of opportunity and flexibility for organizations to work the way that they want to work.
And there's variables you can put, like behavior analysis, timing.
Yeah,
You can look on
exactly.
schedule. Like if your staff's in between 9 and 5, and this is happening at 2:00 in the morning, 100%, you're probably gonna say that's more suspicious than if it was at 2:00 in the afternoon, right? And then in that time frame, if it's 2:00 in the morning, you might have a policy set up that anything after hours for these groups of people, then this happens, this triggers. But I think we're at
Yeah.
that stage where the sky's the limit. You can now think outside the box and think about these things.
Yeah, and I think security leaders, I invite people to sort of think about this problem in a way, like for us internally when we talk about this, is I believe that going forward, security analysts and security engineers are going to become more and more like software developers. And so as a consequence, their work surface has to change. Like today, you look at a lot of security tools, what do they look like? They have some search filters, they have lots of dashboards, you have to drop down and drill down and do all these other things. Versus when you look at how a software developer works, whatever your favorite IDE is, whether it's VS Code or Cursor, whatever you use, is you're interacting with the system, and you're making changes to the system to get the outcome that you want. So it's a very different mindset. It's not just like a read, review, and escalate process. It's a read, review, do something, change something, commit process. So and so I believe that with AI, what's going to happen is, and some advanced organizations starting to do this already now, where the workbench and the way security tools are designed for security analysts will have to change. And because that decisioning process that we want to enable requires a different kind of user experience and a different kind of UI, and not just the same one with a bunch of dashboards that expects you to click. Because if I expect you to click on three things and then finally get to your answer, well, I'm just wasting your time. Well, just give me the damn answer already,
Right.
And so why do I have to work the way the system works? You want to work the way the organization works. And so the UIs themselves are evolving, and that's the way we built our UI, is as a workbench for security analysts, regardless whether they work in compliance or they work in the analysis world, to work that way. Because you can't get faster acceleration into decisioning when you still use the same old tool. I can't expect you to work faster because I just give you a shovel.
Right.
And expect you to perform like you have some high-speed machinery. So I got to change your tooling so that you can do the work in the way you want to do the work.
Oh, 100%. Now I know we got 5 minutes left. Any closing thoughts?
Oh man, I have a lot of thoughts. I think the biggest thing really is I really want to encourage all of us to continue the conversation in an open and in a strong way from a learning interest point of view. I mean, I think maybe if I can do an editorial for a little bit, I still hear a lot of people talk about AI hallucinations as the core argument for not using AI. And I get it, and that's a reality. But there is a counter to that argument in the sense that when we look at it from the perspective of outcome and we ask ourselves the question, is that 70% solution encouraging enough for you to shift and decorate the other 30% so that it's manageable? And because you can't go backwards anymore, the genie's out of the bottle, and we have to make use of it. So the number one thing that I encourage a lot of people is to really just invest your energy to learn how these systems work, because we'll all be using them, and we'll all be protecting people who are using other agentic systems, other AI systems, and do that. And so in an effort to do that, like a couple of things that I want to just like reading material if people want some ideas. And I'll go from like high level to like very, very tactical. You know, when I came up in the industry, the seminal paper that we all read was Aleph 1, Smashing the Stack for Fun and Profit. And that was an important paper. And you know, a lot of ideas came out of that paper. I invite everybody to go back and read Google's Transformer paper, which is Attention is All You Need. Now that paper is many years old. However, it forms the foundation of what spawned a whole bunch of stuff around AI and how AI systems are built and managed today. So those two, I think, are still kind of required reading for all of us in our discipline. The other thing that I would do is a lot of us are starting to defend AI systems. So OWASP has done, you know, a wonderful job, and there's an OWASP top 10 for agentic and AI applications that you can download from OWASP website. I think it's a great starting point if you're just getting into learning and your businesses are using AI technologies already. It's a great starting point to start to kind of orient yourself towards what are the threats and how to manage some of those things. As many of us are familiar with the OWASP top 10 from back in the day for, you know, the regular pre-AI world, I would say. Invite everybody to go take a pitch for the OWASP guys, that everybody should go read this. On the high level, I will share one book. It completely twisted my brain, and that was the reason why, you know, I was like, I really got to start a company. Well, there's two in particular, but I'll just give you one. Is Kai-Fu Lee wrote a book many years ago. It was called AI Superpowers. Okay. And it paints a certain kind of picture of what the world would look like. And this book is already, I want to say, maybe 5, maybe even 6 years old at this point. But I invite everybody to go read that, to just kind of start to wrap your head around what kinds of possibilities are out there and what are some of the things that are happening. So yeah, so I'll take thank you for the offer for the 5 minutes and sharing the reading material.
That's good. I mean, if anyone has any questions, you can always reach out to Monzy. I'm going to put it as LinkedIn. It's linkedin.com/in/Monzy Merza. Go reach out. If you're like, I didn't get the books, I didn't get them, reach out to him. You know, connect with him on LinkedIn. Krogel is actually the website, krogel.com. Check out his website if you guys have any interest in, you know, threat hunting, SOC, you know, what we talked about in this stream and this podcast. It's really important to kind of reach out and ask him lots of questions, because I think in today's industry and how the evolving in business, these are tools you want to take a look at. These are tools you want to be aware of and see if it helps you in your business. So
yeah, and if I can just put in a plug over there, you know, there's a lot of these tools are not available for people to try out. There's just a lot of talking, right? So for Krogel, we wanted to basically end the debate and let the community be the judge. So if you go to krogel.com, there's a download button there. You can download Krogel for free. And we're in a preview period right now. Pretty soon, everyone's going to be able to download without any other gating function. But please go sign up over there, and you can download Krogel for free. You can use Krogel for free, and you can test it out. And if you're at Black Hat, you know, come give us some feedback, and you know, and you can join the Krogel community as well. But it's there for the community to try and experiment with.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Monzy.
Yeah, it's great to be here. Thank you, Brian. Fun conversation.
So that was an awesome conversation. I know we got a lot covered. I think one of the biggest things my takeaway is just the evolving, you know, environment. Like you hear me talk about different AI experts, security, even ones that are developing their own, LLM and agentic tools. You're hearing how we're evolving, like from week to week, day to day, how all these tools are evolving. And I highly recommend the books that Monzy was talking about. Also, just the different types of solutions to keep an eye on, like security solutions, SOC solutions, threat hunting, right? Any type of tools. Make sure you're keeping on top of that, because you're going to be asked in your day-to-day from CISO, CEO, COO, CIO, that top level to security analysts. You're going to be introduced to these tools. You're going to want to understand what are these tools and how they're going to help my organization. So this is a great stream. Watch it again. Listen to the podcast again. Don't forget, software's hackable, being connected is vulnerable. I'll see you next Daily Cyber.